Pastor, doesn't science disprove the Bible?
Isn't Genesis just a fairy tale?
Is God for real? Did he really create everything in 6 literal days?
Didn't God just use the Big Bang?
Why is there death and suffering? Really believe the Bible?
Didn't man evolve from apes?
For answers to these questions and more, stand by for Believing the Bible.
Welcome to Believing the Bible. This is Scott Lane with Terry Reed, Dr. Daniel Harris, and Ed Salzadell, all directors at the San Antonio Bible-Based Science Association. We're also happy to have our new producer, Jeremiah Rosenthal. We are here to reassure you can believe the Bible from the very first verse. Today, we're going to be talking about repetition in the Bible with Jack Cassione, author of In Search of the Biblical Order. He's fluent in Hebrew. He has a master's in fine arts from Southern Illinois University. He was a professor of art in the 1970s at the University of Southern Indiana. He has a master's of divinity from Concordia Theological Seminary. He looks at the oldest Hebrew manuscripts and has computer evidence that seems to show that we are looking in those at the original autographs. He builds on the work of Professor Rabbi Moshe David Umberto Cassuto, and we welcome you and Jack and ask, in short, how did you get into this?
Well, thank you for inviting me to the program. I really appreciate this opportunity. It was an unexpected process. I was deeply interested in the study of aesthetics, art, painting, sculpture, and attended Southern Illinois University at Edwardsville for my graduate work. And after receiving a 3-year degree, there are different kinds of MFAs, and this is the 3-year variety that qualifies you to be a professor. I was able to obtain a position at Indiana State University at Evansville in 1974. And from there, I was there for about 3 years. And then family constraints, namely the need for more funds with a growing family, went into advertising in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. And there, through a minister, and one of the people who attended there was the treasurer of Kmart. And that fellow found that I might be a candidate for the ministry and offered me $10,000. That was one of his 6-month bonus checks at the time. So I took that check and went off to the seminary. And then at the seminary at Concordia Theological Seminary, Fort Wayne, Indiana, in 1977, they found out my background. And next thing you know, I was the PR director and had office as secretary. And spent 4 years there before I went to the ministry. In the process, I couldn't help but combine my intensive study and production of art and study of aesthetics in an application to the text of the Hebrew and Greek in the Bible. And it was there that I noticed a relationship between the text and aesthetics, that there was movement of the words of the text, that these words are not randomly spoken the way we would talk in common English parlance or any other language. There's a certain timing going on where certain words are repeating and groups of words repeating. I brought that to the attention of Dr. Degner. Then I went in 1 Peter. That was the first book I studied in Greek. He had a PhD from the University of Chicago. And I brought that to his attention. And he said, yes, there is something going on there. Or we don't know what it is. If you want to keep studying that, why don't you go ahead? So I did. And then later on in 1987, after I'd done a thesis, wrote my first book, in Search of the Biblical Order. And then after I had been invited to speak at the Sacra Cardia, the university at Milan in 1990 on my book, I found out there that talking to the world's Greek scholars that they really weren't familiar with anything I was talking about, and my research was all on my own. So then after a number of years, I decided to continue with a rather intense study of the subject over the years while I was in the ministry there, obviously doing my work there. And at age 65, published a second edition, much larger, titled again, In Search of the Biblical Order. And it was at that time that I was able to learn of a fellow out on the West Coast. His name is Rabbi E.L. Ravnoy. And he was writing about and speaking about, he wrote a book, Who Really Wrote the Bible? And I wanted to see what he had to say because it was matching up with what I was finding in the book of Revelation. And I found out that he was a follower of Rabbi Moshe David Umberto Cassuto. And he became the linchpin to pull my work together.
All right. You are listening to Believing the Bible. This is Scott Lane with Terry Reed, Dr. Daniel Harris, and a host of others today, which we're very fortunate to have. If you would like to learn more, go to sabsa.org. That is sabbsa.org. And now, Jack, what we'd like to get into is what was actually found. You have found, through computer analysis of the Bible, repetitions of words and phrases 7 times, 10 times, 12 times, and multiples of those numbers, showing an interlaced or interwoven set of or structure to the Bible. And if I'm correct, you've not only found that in Genesis, in Peter, which you looked into early, in Revelation, and throughout the Bible. Is that correct?
Yes. In fact, over the years, I haven't found a book of the Bible that doesn't contain this order.
Yeah, that was a fascinating thing that some of my people asked you at our last meeting, because you also looked at some of the apocryphal books.
Yes.
And you do not find the same order in those, do you?
I find some mimicry at the top level, and there are many levels at the top level, or the surface level, in 4th Esdras or 2nd Baruch, also in the Apocryphon of John. These are some of the apocryphal and pseudo-epigraphical works. And so obviously there was some awareness of this, particularly after the book of Revelation was written, and some are trying to mimic something that they see in Daniel or Ezekiel. And they make efforts and produce these books, but then their work falls apart because they don't know the full process. What usually happens is that people are looking at some kind of order going on. They think it's one number, they think it's 7, or they think it's 10, or they think it's 12. And what happens, we find out, according to Genesis, it's all 3. I haven't found a number greater than 7 in the book of Revelation that's not connected in some way as a reduction of 7, 10, or 12. And that goes for nearly every word in the every number in the New Testament. And of course, all this has its origin all the way back to Genesis, and that's where Umberto Cassuto, the great genius, was doing most of his work. Cassuto was requested by the Vatican as the premier Syriologist and Hebraist in Europe at the time, more than the 1880s. He was requested by the Vatican. They hired him to collate their collection of Semitic scrolls. The Vatican has the world's largest collection of Semitic scrolls, and it's down in its archives and in many levels down underground. And they've been collecting these scrolls since the 12th century under their doctrine of supersessionism. So they felt that this was a requirement. And then by 1925, they realized some of these things are deteriorating, and they can't even collate them. So they hired Cassuto to go down there and find and put these things together, stack them up, line them up, which groups go to what. And he did a fantastic job over 13 years. He was run out of Italy by Mussolini, and he got out in 1938. Then he was able to check all these scrolls from around the world, and the copies, and see the movement of the text, and then came up with, for the first time in print, anywhere, anytime, where he was able to reduce the text down to its fundamental repetitions and order. And this led to my book, Repetition of the Bible, which was published in 2016, for which I give a lot of credit to E.L. Ravnoy and to Umberto Cassuto. And through this, there's absolutely no question that we can establish, and checking again and again with computer search engines, we can prove again and again that there's no question that we have the original text of Genesis chapter 1. Absolutely none. As you saw in the many slides I was demonstrating there before your group, I needed more time. I couldn't show all the slides. Right. Just astonishing amount of information in that chapter.
Incidentally, if you have interest in his book, we offer that with a online or email edition of it. Jack has been very kind to say if you'll simply send $10 to us, and you can get our address for sending it on our website, on our contact page, then he'll send you an e-version of his book. However, I want to capsule with this. I see 3 impacts of your research. The first is, of course, a lot of people will say well, we don't have the original autographs. We've got tons of copies, thousands of copies, but we don't know what the original autographs look like. Your research shows that from the oldest Hebrew text, we are actually looking at that God had protected, and we are looking at the original autographs, and we can trust them. Second, since there's this interlaced and interwoven set of repetitions, there is no way there were redactors who came in during the 4th century BC and rewrote the Bible, interjected it, put in prophecies and things of that nature, that this was God writing from the first. And finally, one thing that you have shown too, with the interest that you found this type of interlaced repetition in all the books of the Bible, but not necessarily in apocryphal books, is that we actually have the Bible God intended us for us to have, that we actually are looking at God's true word. Believing the Bible now has a new way you can support our ministry and get some great gifts. For a donation of $10 or more, we will email you a copy of Repetition in the Bible by Jack Cassione, which shows the Bible to be a self-proving document and shows God's protection of His Word over the ages. For a donation of $25 or more, we will also mail you a copy of Scott Lane's book, What If God Wrote the Bible, showing 6 things we should find in the world and in the Bible if God is the author of the Bible. To get these great gifts, send your check or money order to SABSA at 7620 Avery, Live Oak, Texas 78233. That's SABBSA at 7620 Avery Road, Live Oak, Texas 78233. This information for ordering is also on our contact page at sabsa.org.
Information for creation events in our area are on our website's calendar page. For more information or to schedule a presentation, go to sabsa.org or call 210-599-7240. When you go to our website, you can click on a link to our newsletter. Our website has a link for contact information on which you can order our newsletter to be emailed to you, or you can call us. Also go to whyshouldyoubelieve.com. That is Terry's website containing articles looking at current day issues from a biblical perspective. SABSA meets the second Tuesday of each month at 7 p.m. We are now meeting at Faith Lutheran Church just south of the corner of Jones Maltzberger and Thousand Oaks. There you will find biblical apologetics and creation science teaching found nowhere else in Bexar County, as well as the availability of books and videos on these important subjects. If you missed any part of this show, you can listen to the show anytime by going to the AM 630 KSLR, the Word in South Texas website. Click on KSLR Podcast, scroll down until you find Believing the Bible. Please join us again next Saturday for Believing the Bible. I'm Scott Lane, and for Terry Reed, Dr. Carl Williams, and Ed Salzville, thanks for listening, and we hope you found today a reason to believe the Bible.